Have you ever noticed that the more you heal, the more people vanish, not in anger, not in drama, but in silence? They stop calling, they stop showing up, they drift. And it leaves you wondering, did I do something wrong? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and father of analytical psychology, believed this wasn't a coincidence. He taught that when a person begins to truly evolve, not just change habits, but undergo a deep transformation of the soul, they unconsciously become a mirror. And not everyone wants to see their own reflection, because healing is not just about light, it reveals the shadows in you and in others. And when you start to see your patterns, your traumas, your conditioning, you also start to see theirs. And that's where the silent exits begin. This video is not about blame, it's about understanding. It's about why, when your spirit starts to rise, certain souls can't stay. It's about the unconscious contracts that break when you stop playing small. And it's about how to navigate this sacred loneliness, not with guilt or fear, but with courage, awareness, and grace. In the next few chapters, we'll uncover the exact psychological and spiritual mechanisms that Jung explored. Why people unconsciously pull away when you grow, why your light can trigger someone else's darkness, how vibrational mismatches create emotional distance, how to grieve the losses that come with awakening, and how to trust the process, even when it hurts. You'll realize this isn't rejection, it's revelation. It's not abandonment, it's alignment, and most importantly, it's not the end of connection. It's the beginning of something real. So if you've been feeling the silence around you grow louder, if you've been wondering why your healing feels so lonely, and if your soul is craving an answer that makes peace with this strange new reality, you're in the right place. Let's begin the journey. The psychological mechanism of separation. In Jungian psychology, the journey of becoming oneself is called individuation. It is not a path of perfection, but of wholeness. And this journey, although deeply rewarding, is also profoundly isolating. Because to individuate, one must detach from the collective, from the roles, masks, and expectations society has placed upon us, from the identities we inherited, not chose, from relationships built on compliance rather than truth. This detachment is not always conscious. Often it begins with discomfort, a growing tension between who we are and who we've pretended to be. The more authentic we become, the more artificial certain relationships feel. And suddenly, things don't fit the way they used to. Carl Jung observed that the psyche is designed to seek integration, to bring the unconscious into consciousness. But when this happens, there's a price. The false self begins to fall apart. And the people who are attracted to that version of us, the agreeable, wounded, people-pleasing version, may no longer recognize the person emerging. This is the psychological mechanism behind the separation. It's not always personal. In fact, it's usually deeply impersonal. It's an archetypal movement, a soul-level shift. When one person begins to wake up, the dynamic between them and others changes. Energy that was once entangled in old patterns is now free. And that freedom can be threatening, because some people are not in a relationship with you. They're in a relationship with your wound. They feel safe as long as you stay small, as long as you don't confront the truth, as long as you mirror their own avoidance. But when you begin to heal, when you start to say no where you once said yes, when you speak truth instead of appeasement, they experience it as betrayal. But it's not betrayal, it's transformation. And transformation always disrupts the status quo. The psyche of the evolving person starts rejecting emotional enmeshment. It seeks clarity. It craves authenticity. And this threatens the ego structures of others who are not ready to evolve. Think of it like this. Two people are standing in a house with dim lights. One of them slowly turns on a brighter lamp. At first, the other person squints. They're not used to the light. It's uncomfortable. They say, "Why did you turn that on? I liked it better before." The light is not an attack, it's illumination, but to someone still at home in the shadows, it feels violent. That's how personal evolution often feels to those who are still avoiding theirs. Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. So when you begin to face yours, some people will simply leave. Not because they don't love you, but because they're not ready to love themselves." This first stage of separation is not a punishment, it's a pruning, a sacred trimming of the dead branches in your life so your inner tree can grow freely. It hurts, yes, but it's not cruel, it's conscious. And when you understand this mechanism, that your inner growth triggers outer shifts, you begin to move with less guilt and more clarity. You stop begging people to stay, you stop shrinking to fit, and you begin to trust that the soul knows who belongs and who doesn't in the next chapter of your life. The mirror that disturbs. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But the opposite is also true. Everything that inspires or triggers others in us can reveal what they are avoiding within themselves. This is the essence of the mirror. When a person begins to heal, truly, deeply, they no longer show up from the same wounded place. Their energy changes. Their presence becomes clearer, firmer, more anchored in truth. And this shift can act like a psychic spotlight in the lives of those around them, not because they're trying to expose anyone, but because evolution automatically reveals what is still hidden. Imagine someone who has always agreed, always nodded, always made space for others' chaos. Suddenly, they start setting boundaries. They say no, they stop over-explaining, they stop participating in dysfunctional dynamics. To the unaware, this feels threatening. It sounds like rejection. It feels like abandonment. But what's really happening is a silent unveiling. When you stop playing the role others unconsciously assigned you, the rescuer, the listener, the one who never complains, you force them to face their own behavior. And if they're not ready to look at that reflection, they will turn away, not because you hurt them, but because your truth hurts their illusion. This is why people often disappear when you evolve. You become a mirror that disturbs. You shine light on their avoidance. You reflect the possibilities they're not yet ready to claim. You model change they're too afraid to pursue. And nothing threatens the ego more than watching someone break free from the very cage it still calls home. In Jungian terms, your individuation confronts their shadow, the parts of them they've buried. The unloved, unhealed, unexamined pieces get triggered by your authenticity. And instead of confronting that inner tension, it's easier for them to remove the trigger, you. This is not about superiority. It's not about being more enlightened. It's about timing, readiness, soul contracts. Some people can only meet you in their wounded state. And when you step out of that dynamic, they don't know how to relate to you anymore. And so they leave, silently, abruptly, confused, sometimes angry, sometimes passive, but almost always without the language to explain what they're feeling. Because how do you say, "I can't be around you anymore. Your healing reminds me I'm still broken"? How do you confess, "Your peace unsettles me because I've only known connection through chaos"? And so they simply disappear. This is the great paradox of inner work. The more whole you become, the more you threaten the false foundations of certain relationships. And yet, this is necessary. You are not meant to contort yourself into comfort for others. You're not meant to dim so others won't be blinded. You are meant to embody your wholeness, fully, unapologetically, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Because the mirror you hold, though disturbing, is also sacred. It's not your job to shatter people's illusions, but you are allowed to stop participating in them. You are allowed to live from truth. You are allowed to evolve, even if it costs you company. And when you do, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract people who aren't afraid of mirrors, people who want to be seen and who want to see you, people who've done their own shadow work and can meet you from a place of depth, not projection. Until then, let them leave. Let the silence teach you. Let your evolution be enough. If this message resonates, if you felt the silent exits in your own life, subscribe for more soul-centered reflections every week. The law of resonance, when we no longer vibrate the same. There's a moment in every inner journey when a deep realization dawns. Some people were only aligned with your pain, not your peace. Carl Jung explored this through the concept of psychic energy, the subtle forces that move through our thoughts, emotions, and relationships. He understood that every human being emits a kind of inner frequency, shaped by their beliefs, traumas, shadows, and light. When someone begins to heal, that frequency shifts. This isn't metaphysical fluff, it's energetic reality. Just as radio stations transmit on specific wavelengths, human beings broadcast through their vibration. And just like a radio can't pick up a station it's not tuned to, people can't connect if they no longer resonate. This is the law of resonance. In the beginning of your life, you may have bonded through shared wounds. Trauma created bridges. Familiar pain felt like love. Dysfunction felt like home. You didn't question it, you adapted to it. But when you begin to heal, your signal changes. You no longer attract or are attracted to relationships that run on fear, guilt, codependency, or control. You stop matching the frequencies of old pain, and suddenly, the people who once felt close begin to feel distant. They haven't changed. You have, and energetically the bond weakens. This is not rejection, it's resonance in action. In Jungian terms, individuation brings parts of the unconscious into conscious alignment. That means you're no longer unconsciously replaying inherited patterns. You begin choosing your energy, and in doing so, you stop unconsciously feeding certain dynamics. And those dynamics start to collapse. People who were magnetized to your chaos no longer feel drawn. Conversations that once flowed now feel forced. Interactions that were once intimate now feel superficial, because vibrationally, you're not meeting at the same level anymore. This doesn't mean one person is higher or better. It simply means the alignment has shifted, and this shift is often felt before it's understood. Friends stop calling, family becomes distant, old connections fade, and it can feel like abandonment. But it's not. It's an energetic recalibration. You've changed the channel, and those who haven't are still listening to the old frequency. Until they tune in, you won't resonate. And this is where grief comes in, because even when the separation is clean, it still hurts. You remember the connection, the laughter, the memories, and a part of you may still hope to bring them along. But healing isn't a group journey, it's deeply personal. And not everyone is ready to upgrade their vibration. Some may stay stuck in their narratives. Some may resent your growth. Some may interpret your peace as arrogance. But the truth is, your vibration now acts as a filter. And only those aligned with your authenticity will stay. This is where the inner work deepens. Because to maintain your vibration, you must resist the temptation to shrink back down just to feel close again. You must resist the urge to dim your light so others can feel comfortable in the dark. You must trust that those who are meant for your path will meet you at your level, not pull you back to theirs. This law of resonance, though painful at first, becomes a profound gift, because it means you no longer have to chase belonging. You simply attract it by being who you truly are. If you're navigating this shift and feeling the weight of outgrowing people you once loved, subscribe. You're not alone. This channel is here to walk beside you. The grief of spiritual awakening. There's a grief that doesn't get talked about enough. The grief that comes with awakening, not because something terrible happened, but because something true did. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation is not a path to comfort. It's a path to integration, and integration by its nature requires us to shed, not just illusions, not just projections, but people. Because when you begin to truly awaken, when your soul stirs and your eyes open, and you begin to see yourself, others, and the world with clarity, you start to realize something quietly heartbreaking. Some of your most meaningful relationships were built on a version of you that no longer exists. And that version of you, the one who stayed quiet, who overgave, who betrayed their own needs just to feel loved, is now dissolving. It should feel like liberation. But in reality, it often feels like loss, because awakening doesn't just expand your awareness, it narrows your circle, it thins the veil, and in doing so, it reveals how much of your life was held together by unspoken compromises and unconscious fears. You see the masks you wore, you see the roles you played, and worse, you see how many people loved you for those masks and roles, not for your essence. And when you stop performing, they leave. Or worse, they try to pull you back into the performance. They beg for the old you. They guilt you. They frame your healing as selfishness. They frame your awakening as rebellion. They say you've changed, and they're right. But you didn't change to hurt them. You changed to find yourself. And that's the paradox. The more you become you, the more alone you may feel. This is the grief of spiritual awakening. It's subtle. It doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it's just a silence that echoes, a chair that's no longer filled, a message that never comes, a phone call that used to light up your screen now gone. And it's easy, in that silence, to doubt yourself, to wonder, maybe I'm the problem, maybe I should have stayed quiet, maybe it was better when I didn't know. But that's the old programming speaking, the inner child afraid of being abandoned for telling the truth. The real you knows better. The real you knows that grief is not a sign you're going the wrong way. It's a sign that you're shedding what can't follow you. Jung understood this. He saw that the soul cannot grow without pain, not because the universe is cruel, but because awakening burns away the false. And anything built on illusion will feel like a loss when it dissolves. So what do you do with this grief? You honor it. You sit with it, not as something to fix, but as something sacred. Because this grief is not weakness. It's the echo of your old life fading. It's the residue of roles you no longer need. It's the cost of your own becoming. You light a candle for what was, you bless it, you thank it, and then, gently, you let it go. Because if you hold too tightly to the past, you'll choke the future. And your soul didn't come here to stay comfortable. It came to remember. If this resonates, if your heart is grieving what your mind can't explain, subscribe. Let's honor the losses that made space for our truth. The spiritual filter. Not everyone is meant to go with you. As painful as it is to accept, there comes a moment in every soul's journey when a deeper truth emerges. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Carl Jung didn't just explore the shadows within the psyche. He understood the sacred design of evolution. He knew that as we awaken to who we truly are, life itself begins to act as a spiritual filter, a quiet sorting process. A shedding, a separation, not out of judgment, but out of necessity. When you rise into alignment. And alignment is not just about what you gain, it's about what you release. People you once loved, stories you once told, roles you once played, patterns you once tolerated. They begin to fall away, not because you're cruel, but because you're becoming clear. And that clarity is magnetic, but it's also divisive, because clarity confronts everything foggy. When you get clear about your boundaries, those who benefited from your lack of them will resist. When you get clear about your worth, those who were comfortable with your self-abandonment will recoil. When you get clear about your truth, those still living in denial will fall silent. This is the filter at work. It's not that you chose to leave people behind. It's that your path no longer bends to accommodate their avoidance. And yes, it can feel brutal. You may ask yourself, why can't they come with me? Why can't they grow too? Why does healing have to be so lonely? But the truth is, everyone has their own timing, and some souls are not ready to meet you where you're going, not because they're bad, not because they're wrong, but because their lesson is unfolding at a different pace. Your only task is to stay true to yours, because if you wait, if you shrink, if you drag them along out of guilt, you will stall your own becoming. You will carry weight that was never yours. You will walk paths that weren't meant for you, and eventually you'll lose yourself in the process. This is the soul's final initiation, the courage to continue without those you love. To understand that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your evolution, that compassion does not require self-abandonment, that staying connected doesn't always mean staying close. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that privilege often comes with a cost, losing people who only knew the version of you that was hiding. But what you gain is everything. You gain your truth, you gain your alignment, you gain relationships built not on trauma bonding, but on resonance, not on need, but on soul recognition, and most importantly, you gain yourself. That is the ultimate filter, the one that removes what cannot survive in the light of who you are becoming. So let them fall away. Let the silence deepen. Let the path narrow, because the ones who are meant for your future will never require you to shrink. They will recognize you, they will honor your becoming, and they will walk beside you, not behind, not ahead, but beside you. Not everyone is meant to go with you, and that is how it should be. Let the silence become sacred. In the end, this journey of growth, of becoming, is not about gaining more, but about becoming less entangled, less conditioned, less dependent on roles and approval, more aligned with essence. Carl Jung taught that individuation is the unfolding of the self, not the self you were taught to be, but the self that already is, waiting beneath the noise. And when you start to live from that place, that raw, radiant, unapologetic truth, the world around you rearranges. Some people leave, some stay quiet, some no longer see you. But the ones who remain, the ones who meet you in the depth, who feel your frequency, who don't flinch at your truth, they are the gifts of your shedding. Let the others go, not with resentment, but with reverence. They were part of your becoming, and now they are part of your release. The silence they leave behind, let it be sacred. Let it echo not as abandonment, but as space. Space for new alignment, space for inner peace, space for the soul to breathe. Because this path, though lonely at times, is never a mistake. It is a sacred unraveling, a necessary clearing, a return to essence. So remember, you are not wrong for growing, you are not unlovable because they left, and you are not alone in your becoming. You are shedding what can't follow. You are grieving what was never meant to last. You are rising into who you were always meant to be. This is not the end of connection. It's the beginning of real connection. The kind that meets you soul to soul. The kind that doesn't fear your light. The kind that doesn't leave when you evolve, but evolves with you. Thank you for walking this path today. If your heart feels seen, if your soul feels stirred, stay connected. Your journey is sacred, and this space is here to honor it every step of the way. Subscribe, reflect, return to your truth.